You're listening to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast, episode 162. Welcome to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Paula Price, lawyer turned certified executive coach. This podcast was created to empower women lawyers just like you to create a life and practice you love. Join me every week for a break from the hustle so we can focus on you, what you truly want, and how you can create it. If you're over the overwhelm, done with putting out fires, and ready to redefine success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Ready for today's episode? Let's dive in. As a woman lawyer, what supports do you have in place for yourself? We know your job is hard. It is demanding. It is high pressure. You have multiple commitments at any given time. And you are so much more than just your job. You have a life outside of work. You have family. You have friends. You have interests, commitment. And when you put all of that together, you need support to do it all. At work, you need to have mentors and sponsors and team members that you can rely on. At home as well. You need people who support you. If you have kids, you need your daycare, you need your school, you need your nanny, you need your partner, you need family, you need friends. People who can rally behind you and help you manage all of the things that you have on your plate. Now, as a coach, I work with lawyers in a couple of different ways, and I help them. I help support them to reach their goals. I help them navigate challenges. And one of the ways that I do that is through one-to-one coaching. And my guess is that if you're listening to this podcast, and if you've listened to any previous episodes, that you have a fairly good grasp of what that looks like. But one of the things that I do that I feel is not very well understood generally is group coaching. And for the past year and a half, I have been hosting my own group coaching program for women lawyers. And I'm going to share more about that today because I would love to see more women lawyers using this type of resource to support themselves. As I mentioned, I've created my own program. I've also coached in other programs offered by other organizations to support other lawyers. One program was to support women lawyers. A program I'm working in currently is to support junior lawyers. This group coaching dynamic can be really powerful. And if it's something that you haven't heard of before or that you're curious about, this episode is an opportunity to learn more about it. And as you listen to what I'm sharing with you, I would invite you to think about whether or not this is something that you would be interested in, whether it's a container that I have created, another coach has created, whether it's a container that you want to create for yourself. Maybe you're in leadership at a law firm and you think that a group coaching program for your lawyers, for your women lawyers would be something that they would really benefit from. Maybe it's something that you want to create. And if that's the case, please reach out to me. I would love to help you do that. So what is group coaching? Really, it's a way of coaching that involves a coach, somebody like me, and a group of people who all want to be coached together. And usually there's a common theme. So the programs that I've been offering are for women lawyers who have specific goals for their practice. The goals do not have to be the same, but they all come together and they create a goal for themselves, and then they work toward that goal. The program that I'm offering in July, so if you're listening to this podcast when it goes live, then you'll hear that I'm offering a program that starts July 2024. And in that container, we're all going to be working toward goals that are related to leadership. So the idea of having a group coaching program is that there is something in common, right? One of the programs I was involved in was sponsored through the Women Lawyers Forum, which is a subsection of the Canadian Bar Association. This was a program that was created during the pandemic to help support women lawyers as they navigated the challenges that came along with that. Currently, I'm involved in a coaching program that supports junior lawyers in British Columbia. So this is designed to help foster the growth and learning of lawyers who are just starting out. So when you think of a group coaching program, typically it's centered around a group of individuals who all have something in common. They're all looking to build something similar. Now, the way that those programs work is that you then meet collectively together. The ones I've been involved in have been virtual. You could also have a group coaching program that meets in person. And so the idea there is that everybody knows each other or gets to know each other over time, and that it is the coach who is leading the coaching, who is leading the discussion. Now, you may ask yourself why you would want to do a coaching program that would be in a group container versus a one-to-one container. Now, I love the one-to-one coaching framework. I work with coaches one-to-one for myself, and I, of course, coach my clients one-to-one. And if you have questions about what a one-to-one coaching relationship is all about, I recorded a podcast episode recently. It's called What Coaching Can and Cannot Do for You. And if you haven't listened to it already, I would refer you back to that episode because it will give you more clarity about what coaching involves. Now, when you think about one-to-one coaching and then what would be different about a group experience is, of course, that you've now got people who you're doing this in community with. And I find that there is a real benefit and a real power that comes with coaching in community. And I'm going to talk about some of those reasons in this episode. So one of the first reasons that comes to mind for me is the idea that when you work in a container, you are putting yourself in community with individuals who may never have met you before. Now, this would be different if you form your own group with lawyers who you already know. But if you're doing it with people you've never met before, what can be really compelling here is that these people do not know you. They do not have a preconceived notion of who you are or what you are capable of. One of the challenges that I see lawyers face is that sometimes, and particularly where they've grown up in a single firm, they were a student there over a summer, then maybe they articled, they were a junior associate. Sometimes what they feel is that the people they work with never stop seeing them as that junior lawyer, as that student, and it can be limiting for them in terms of how they see themselves and for the people who they work with. When you step into a container where you're meeting people for the first time, you're introducing yourself at the level that you are at today, not the level that you were at 5 years ago, they see you differently. They don't have stories attached to what you've done in the past or where they see you. They only see you for who you are now and where you are going. And that can be really impactful in terms of the possibilities that you see for yourself, the way that you interact with your peers. It can be really powerful for helping you to move forward. Another really compelling element of working as a member of a group coaching program is that you see that you are not alone. What I found practicing law and what I've noticed a lot of the clients that I work with also find is that practicing as a lawyer can sometimes feel very siloed. I know when I was practicing, especially after I had children and I had less time available for socializing with my peers at work, is that I felt very alone a lot of the time. I felt like I did a lot of my work alone. I felt like my struggles were my own. I didn't really have anyone that I could talk to in the way that I wanted to. So yes, you have colleagues who may be amazing, but they're not trained as professionals to help coach you. You might have a mentor who's a crackerjack mentor who can really help you. You may not have such a mentor in your firm or at your organization or even in your professional life. You might reach out to a counselor and find that they're really good at helping you deal with some of the challenges that you're struggling with emotionally, but they're not able to give you what you need in terms of strategic career guidance or asking you the questions that you need to really evaluate what it is that you want from your professional life. So when you then step into a coaching container and you're there along with a group of women lawyers who are just like you, they're smart, they're high achieving, they're values driven, they're looking to be excellent, and you hear them talking about some of the challenges that they're going through, the difficult conversations with clients, the goals that they're trying to set, where they want to go with their career and some of the limits that they're finding. When you start seeing that you are not alone, it can be so powerful because you see that you are in community. It's not just you who feels these things. Now, what you might also find when you are in community with a group of women lawyers who have all these characteristics in common with you, who are facing similar challenges, who have similar aspirations, is that you feel validated. Now, this can sometimes happen where you look around your organization and you look at leadership and you look at yourself and you look at leadership and you kind of go back and forth. You can almost imagine your head nodding back and forth, and you don't see anybody around you who is like you. Right? You may be a woman with children at home and you're juggling your professional work, you're juggling the kids, you've got daycare pickups, you've got a nanny to balance, you're putting meals on the table, and maybe you're surrounded by a group of lawyers, none of whom has a family. And you show up at the office at 9 o'clock and you've been up since 6 a.m. getting all the ducks in a row, getting yourself together. And you show up and everybody else has just kind of rolled in. They had a shower. They maybe stopped at Starbucks, kind of how things were before you had a family. And you just don't feel like you're able to connect on the same level, right? You just don't feel like you're on the same wavelength. And so when you then put yourself in a container where everybody is like you, right? They have similar experiences. They have a similar frame of reference. All of a sudden, you don't feel alone. You feel validated. The struggles you have feel real. Yes, I can see how that's really hard for you. And let's talk about how we're going to kill it at work today. So it can be so validating to see you're not alone, that there are people just like you. These are people where you do not have to explain everything, right? Whether or not you have a family. I'm even thinking just being a woman lawyer, speaking with other women lawyers, they speak your language, they get it. They're not offering you ideas that you know are not going to work. I think we all have the experience of the extremely well-meaning family members or friends who aren't lawyers, who don't really get it. And you might explain something that's happening and they'll be like, well, why don't you just do this? Or why don't you just do that? And you know that that would never work. And they don't know that that would never work because they're not in the world that you live in. And so imagine surrounding yourself by a group of women who 100% get it. And when you talk to them, you don't have to explain it from the beginning. They get it. Now, what is also amazing about being in a container like that is that you feel supported. When I was in a coaching container, it was a couple of years back. It was a mastermind program that was a group of about 8 other women. They were all entrepreneurs. Some of them were coaches. Some of them are not. And what I found so incredible is that I would log onto the Zoom platform. The calls were Wednesday mornings and I would see the faces of these women and I just felt so supported by them and by our coach. And the funny thing is that their support extended beyond even the meetings that we had together. So there were times where I was working on something, discussions, negotiating contracts that were being done. I was reporting back to the group, but I was doing this on my own time. And I can remember having these really, difficult conversations, or they felt difficult to me. And in the back of my mind, I was imagining this group of women. I was imagining their faces on the Zoom screen. And I was imagining the pep talks that they had given me before I went out to do the thing that I was scared to do. And I was imagining how great it would feel when I went back to the group and I reported to them on what had happened. So when you feel supported in this way, it's like you have this invisible source of power, right? You may be at work dealing with a difficult client or having a difficult chat with your boss or creating something that is brand new, right? Trying to create a practice that looks different from where you are currently. You want new clients, you want more experience. And you are doing that with the support of a group of women who maybe aren't there with you physically, but who you are connected to. And what's incredible about this group is that they have no skin in the game. Much like when you're working with a coach, it's different from talking to your partner, for example, or talking to a friend, or talking to your mother, or talking to a colleague. They all have their own interests. And as much as they may try to push those interests aside, the truth is they do care. If it's a colleague, they probably want to keep you at work. They don't want to see you go. If it's a mentor, it may be a similar situation. If it's a parent, they just want to make sure that you're safe and happy. When you are with a group of women who are committed only to your success, they're going to support you. They're going to be honest with you. They're going to offer whatever support they can possibly do to help you achieve the outcome that is best for you. Now, another magical thing is accountability. Now, working with a coach one-to-one will create some accountability, 100%. What I have found about group programs, particularly the group programs that meet regularly over a period of time, is that you then develop this sense of accountability to the group. You want to be able to report back to them in terms of what has been going on. So you have those regular meetings, you have a desire, like I just described, to share updates with them. You may commit to taking an action in front of them. And once you make that public declaration, it then becomes something that you absolutely must follow through on. So, for example, when I first decided to create group coaching programs for women lawyers, it was the result of having been in a group coaching program myself. I had been thinking about doing it for years. I hadn't yet built up the courage to do it. I was really flummoxed by some of the technical and practical challenges that came along with it. And that group of women that I was with was so supportive. And they were pushing me ahead and telling me that, of course I should go ahead and do this. And it was really, really motivating for me to know that I had this support that I could turn to and a group that I could update. And that has been one of the most amazing things. I'm so proud of myself for having done that in the first place, because it has allowed me to create containers where I've now had the privilege of working with 3 groups of 8 women to help them achieve their goals within these containers. And so for you, if you think about a goal that you have, maybe it's a goal that's going to take about 6 months. It might be a career decision that you're looking to make. You're trying to decide whether you should stay at a firm that you're at or whether you should move on. Maybe you're really interested in advancing into leadership and you want to be really deliberate about how you're going to do that. Maybe you have practice challenges, right? You've got kind of a practice that feels reactive. You want to put into place some more systems. You want to set up some boundaries and you want support in doing that. I mean, these are all reasons why you might find it really helpful to join a group of women who are there to support you. So for example, if you're struggling with your boundaries, you're having difficulty asserting them, it would be really helpful to have a group there who can guide you, who could offer suggestions, who are there simply to support you as you delineate what you are going to do and what you are not going to do. It also helps you measure your progress when you are checking in regularly. Now, this is true of whether you work with a single coach one-to-one or you're with a group, but you can actually see the progress that you're making. And what's different about being in a group relative to being on your own is that you actually get to see other people's progress as well, which is really incredible. And you don't always notice it week to week. But when you start measuring yourself month to month or 3 month to 3 month or from month 1 to month 6, you can see a big shift in terms of the way that people are showing up, the confidence that they have within themselves. I know as a coach that one of the greatest transformations I see with the lawyers that I work with, and particularly in these groups, is the level of confidence that women develop after they go through that experience of sharing what is going on for them within that container. I think it takes a lot of courage for you to be in a group with other people and talking about some of the challenges that you're having. It forces you to speak out loud some things that maybe you're not comfortable sharing with other people. And it is so liberating. I say this having done it myself and having seen other people do this. It is so liberating when you finally say what it is that is on your mind, and then you problem solve and work your way through it. And you have others who are there to support you, others who hear you. And then you hear other people share challenges that they are having, and you can relate to those challenges and you can see them work through it. And what happens over time is that these things that seemed like problems at the beginning start to fall away as your confidence develops. And so when you are in a group, you're able to see your own progress because you're showing up consistently. You're able to then look back and think about where you started, and you see it in the people who are around you. Now, I mentioned your problems start to feel smaller. And this happens because often when I work with clients, they start out and they've got this problem that they've been stewing on for some time. This might be you. You might have been perplexed or ruminating over your job, right? Your job is not working out for you. You think you want to leave, but you're not sure because you feel comfortable where you are. There's a clear path ahead. Nothing else out there seems like it's going to be a better fit. And so you find yourself going back and forth. Maybe for a time, things start to get better. You're working on a file that you like. You've got your colleagues that you like working with, but then things change. Somebody leaves, or you get assigned a new file, or now you're working with that lawyer who you find really difficult to work with, and everything is all of a sudden terrible. And so you start thinking about leaving once again, but then things shift, or you've got a trial date coming up and you don't want to leave before the trial date. I mean, these are the stories that we tell ourselves, right? These are the reasons that we stay stuck. And so when you are then putting yourself in a container where you set as a specific goal, making a decision, and then you are coming week to week and you're talking about that decision, you start to see how it is not necessarily as big of a problem as it has felt like in your mind, because you start speaking about it. You start looking at it more objectively, and you start to now be able to break it down into smaller pieces. You start to solve some of those problems. What you might notice is week to week, as you start implementing what you're learning, you find that you're able to see those problems fall away. And what you might also experience is the relief of not being alone, right? When you are sitting alone with your problems, it just doesn't feel good, right? Those problems have a way of getting bigger. And yet when you share them and you've now got a group, you've got a mastermind, you've got 9 brains all thinking about you and your problem, all of a sudden it doesn't seem like such a big deal. Now, another really amazing thing that happens when you're in a group environment is the idea of an objective lens. When you are coaching with me one-to-one, one thing that is hard to see is yourself, right? If we're on Zoom, you might actually see your face on the Zoom screen, and that might give you some layer of objectivity. Or when you hear your own words being spoken out loud, they may ring in your ear in a way that they don't ring when you're simply thinking about them. What is so compelling about being in a group is that you see other people explain their challenges. And because it's not you speaking, you're not concerned about the words that you're using. You're not worried about whether this is something that can be fixed. You're simply observing. And it can be so powerful because you will then see how, number one, you're probably not alone. What they are describing is very likely something that you can relate to, if not based exactly on the facts as they're describing them, then the issue, right? Boundaries, confidence, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, right? These are all things that so many of us can relate to on some level, and you're hearing it from somebody else. And when you start looking at how they're describing their problem, you will start to see solutions for them. And interestingly, those solutions might be really excellent solutions for you. So double benefit. Not only can you share with them, hey, maybe this is something that would work for you. This has worked for me in the past. It may be also something that you can implement in your own practice. Now, another component of what can be really powerful in a group is that it gives you a safe space in which you can build your courage and your confidence. So, I've spoken a little bit about this already, but when you're in that group container and you've made a commitment to grow in some way, it can be really, really impactful for you to start talking about it and sharing it in a group. So if you think about a big goal, for example, that you want to set for yourself, maybe you want to change jobs and you haven't told anybody about it. It just feels too daunting. If you share that with a group and you start to get some initial feedback, you might start to realize like, hey, this actually isn't such a big deal. And then you might start taking steps toward that. Maybe it's informational interviews or whatever it happens to be. And you're reporting back. And maybe to you, this just seemed like an outrageous idea. It seemed like the worst idea in the world. It seemed like it was never going to happen for you. But then this group is able to reflect back to you that, hey, you know what? It's not so crazy. Lots of people in your position have done that before. And so you start to feel a lot more comfortable. Now, we've talked about some of these themes already, but when you're in the support of the group, what you might find is that you start taking on greater challenges. So being in that container gives you the space to start thinking about what you truly want and to get clear about the goals that you're setting for yourself. You're doing that in a container with women who want nothing but your success. Again, going back to this idea that none of them has a vested interest in whether you stay at your job or not, whether you set a boundary or not. All they want is your success. you have that accountability, right? That accountability that you are going to show up, you are going to keep yourself accountable, and you've got this safety net to fall back on, right? You can go and let's say something doesn't go exactly the way that you wanted it to. You know that you're going to have a conversation with this group of incredible women who are all there to support you. And finally, just in terms of your confidence, these are women who see you at your highest potential. They already see that for you. They see that because they've met you where you are. They understand your dreams and aspirations. They see the challenges that you're having, and they know that you are capable of rising above those challenges and getting to exactly where it is that you want to be. And finally, this is a space where you can test ideas, right? Sometimes we just want to run our ideas by others. Is this crazy? Am I missing something? Can you help me see the blind spot? You've got a group there who are all able to offer that perspective to you. Now, I think it's really important when you decide to become part of a group to be in a group that feels good to you. And when I create group coaching programs for lawyers, and particularly I'm thinking about the program that I'm offering to women lawyers, there are a number of things that I think are important. Number one, I love to set a tone in the groups that I'm coaching that is a balance of kindness and expansiveness. And this is kindness to yourself, first and foremost, and also kindness to each other. And I also want this to be expansive. I think when people sign up for coaching, the reason they're doing it is because they want help getting to a place where they feel like either they can't get there on their own or it's going to take them a long time to get there on their own. And what they want is someone to help guide them through that process, to hold their hand through that process. And so when you work with me, I want to push you, but I never want to push you in a way that doesn't feel good to you. I never want to use negative self-talk, I don't want you to use negative self-talk. And I never want to put the kind of pressure on you that would make you shrink, that would make you feel that it is hurtful, right? I think we are in a culture that sometimes puts on a pedestal this idea of being really hard on ourselves, being really critical of each other, critical of ourselves, thinking that that is how we're going to learn and how we're going to grow. And in my coaching containers, I do not want that to be the energy. The energy instead is how are we going to approach this from a compassionate lens? How are we going to grow in a way that is constructive? How can we be both kind to ourselves and achieve the absolute maximum potential impact that we are capable of? So that is the container that I create in the coaching spaces that I am hosting. Now, I find that I have been very lucky in terms of the groups that I've created, that the women who are drawn to the work that I do tend to be women who are like-minded. They tend to be really smart, incredible women who are motivated by excellence. They are motivated by integrity. They care about each other. They care about the humans in their lives. They are looking to be leaders at work. They are leaders outside of work, and they are thoughtful. They are intentional, and they are women who are they are incredible. They are compassionate. And when they come together, what that does is it creates this magical container, this room where the vibe is expansive. Everybody is encouraged to be their best, to feel their best. And when people have challenges, they have support for them right there. When they're explaining something that was difficult that happened, they've got empathy right there. And so I think it's really important to create safety. I think it's really important to foster that empathy, that compassion, and also that eye on growth, right? Where can we go together? Now, when I create programs, I want the program to be one that has a blend of structure and freedom. So I've been in coaching containers where there has been structure that has been too structured, right? There's been too much of a curriculum, and a curriculum like that doesn't work for me. What I know about myself is that I am busy. I've got a business that I'm running. I've got kids that I'm raising. I've got attempts at having a life outside of my family and outside of work. So my social life, interests, keeping myself healthy. And so with all that busyness, and I don't love the word busyness, but I don't have a better way to describe it. If I'm in a container where I need to do X, Y, Z, and I need to do it their way, I need to do their homework, it's not likely going to work for me. And I say this because I've signed up in programs like that where I've tried to do it and they have failed because I just can't do all the steps that they want me to do. I don't find those steps to necessarily be applicable or relevant to me. And it creates a sense of frustration, like I haven't met the goals of the program. I also find I don't want to do them, right? I don't feel drawn or compelled to be participating. What I do find is really helpful is where there's a sufficient structure that I feel like I'm working productively toward a goal, where there are themes and there's work that I can do on my own time, and I get to set the direction. So that's what I do in my coaching programs. This is not a cookie cutter program where everybody does the same thing. Instead, what I do is I offer themes. I offer a 6-month program where each month has a theme. Each person is invited to create their own goal. And then we go through the themes together and we use their goal as a testing ground. So they're able to develop for each of themselves the steps that are going to be most useful for them. So they're not following a prescriptive path that I've created. They are following a path that they have created, which is a blend of what is most relevant and useful for them in their practice and the concepts and tools that we're learning within the program. So it's a mix. There's theory and there's practice. And if you've ever learned to play a musical instrument, then you understand the significance of that, right? Of learning what the notes look like on a page and then being able to play those on your instrument. So we learn within the context of our classroom or virtual classroom, but then you go out and apply that in the real world, and then you get to report back. I like to set a pace that is steady and not overwhelming. I know for so many of the lawyers that I work with, the idea of meeting every week is too much. And so I don't try to impose that on you. I find that a pace of twice monthly is ideal for the containers that I have created. There's enough consistency that we meet regularly, that there's a cadence and momentum is created and sustained throughout the program. And it's not so infrequent that we're not able to catch up with each other. And what I do is I like to record the sessions so that they are available if you have to miss a session. I think the people who get the best value, the most results, are the ones who are able to attend the program with most regularity. So if you're thinking about yourself and what works for you, if you would find that that would just not be doable for you, then maybe that's not the right type of container for you. You might be better off in a container that meets once a month or once every 6 months, but you're going to want to think about how a program like this could support you. And if you think about that, what would be different for you if you had a meeting once every 2 weeks with a group of women who were there to support you? What would you be doing in between those sessions that would pull you forward? Now, I also think it's really important for you to set a clear goal for the program. So if you were, for example, to sign up with me for the program that I create or another program that was offered by another coach, I would encourage you to think about what you want to get from that program. Nobody can really do that for you. Other people can set goals for the program or a curriculum, but the way to have the greatest impact is for you to tailor it to what is going to be of most service to you. Now, the other thing that I wanted to share is the curriculum that I have created within the coaching program that I offer. So again, it's 6 months and we start out by setting a goal. And the reason that we set a goal is that it gives you as a participant something to work toward over the course of 6 months. Now, when you set a goal, I take you through an exercise to do that. And if you've listened to the podcast before, then you know that there are a lot of tools that I have when it comes to goal setting and a number of different philosophies. Philosophies like setting a goal that will stretch you, right? That you will need to become a different version of who you are now in order to achieve that goal. We also talk about self-concept. So the second month is all about self-concept. Now, this group that I'm leading in July, it's all going to be based on you as a leader. So the self-concept there is going to be very much focused on who you are as a leader. So you might think about that for yourself. How do you lead within your organization? How do you lead yourself? What characteristics make for a great leader as far as you are concerned? And how do you step into that and embody that within your role as a lawyer? We talk about obstacles. Obstacles are the ingredients to your success. When you understand what stands in the way, you now understand the way. So we spend a month focused on what your obstacles are as a learning tool, and we figure out how you're going to overcome them. We talk about confidence, authority, and power. So this is a very impactful month because when you focus on these things, and in particular, when you think about yourself as a leader, with full confidence, where you own your authority, where you're not afraid to exert your power, things are different. The way that you show up is different. What you're willing to reach for is different. And so I would invite you to think about how that applies to you, how stepping into your full confidence, your full authority, your full power would change things for you. We talk about boundaries. Once you've done the work of figuring out what goal you want to achieve and who you need to be to achieve that goal, when you've identified the obstacles, when you're embracing your full strength as a leader, then you also need to be intentional about where you're choosing to spend your time and your energy and where you're drawing the line, the boundaries that you're going to set, and how you're going to articulate those boundaries within your work environment and outside of work. And then finally, sustainable growth. That's the last theme that we cover because you go through this process, you grow, and then you think about what comes next. And I want you to feel set up for that next stage of your evolution as a practitioner. Now, within the groups that I've been doing, I've also offered additional trainings, one about time management, because that's a topic that I speak with so many lawyers about. It is relevant to all of us, regardless of your stage of practice. There are always things that you can learn about how you choose to spend your time, ways for you to plan your time effectively, ways to build teams to amplify the impact of your work. We also talk about transitions because inevitably, whether you transition literally from job A to job B, or if your transition is internal, you're going to want to master what it means to let go of one thing in order to create the next. I also offer in my group programs individual one-to-one sessions. I do that because I think for some lawyers, there are topics that you'd prefer to discuss separately with me. In particular, it can be really helpful at the beginning when we're setting up the goal that you want, or if there are particular challenges that you're having, or you want to report on specific wins that you're having and celebrate those, or think about how something that's very unique to you, you might want to discuss that in an individual context. So you have that option as well. And so in the groups that I've created, again, we've had that theme. And what I also try to do in my groups is create a balance. So when we are sharing within the group, so the way I've structured it is the first call of the month is more content heavy. That's when I'm sharing the lessons of the month, the concepts and the themes that you will be applying. And then the second call is more about you sharing your experience, what you've been applying, challenges that you've had, opportunities that you've managed to create through the work that we're doing together. I also think it's really important to be responsive. So when I've hosted groups, I've noticed each group has a different theme or different themes that are emerging. So I like to tailor the materials to those themes. And I also think it's important for us to have celebration. So celebration at each of the calls, and then celebration at the end of our time together to reflect on and celebrate all the things that we've accomplished. So today we've been talking about group coaching, specifically group coaching for women lawyers. And if this is something that is of interest to you, then please do reach out to me. If you're thinking about creating a program like this, if you're at a firm and you'd like me to be a facilitator for something like this, I would 100% love to do that for you. And so please do reach out and we can talk about what that would look like. Now, if you're listening to this episode and you're interested in joining one of my group programs, then please do reach out to me. If there's still time and still room, you're welcome to reach out to talk about joining the July session, July 2024. If the time for that has passed, reach out anyways, because I will continue to offer programs in groups as long as I'm practicing, I believe. And so at least that's my intention for now. So let me know and I will keep you updated on what that can look like. Now, if you're thinking about the program that starts in July and wondering if that would be a good fit for you, then I'm going to offer some of the characteristics that I think would make this a wonderful program for you. I would recommend that this be something that you consider if you have a number of years of practice under your belt. The focus in July is going to be on leadership. And so what leadership can look like to you is preparing yourself for entering into a position of leadership, whether that's a formal title like partner, or depending on your organization, it might look a little bit different. It might be that you are making a decision about where you are. Is the firm that you're in the right place for you? Are there the opportunities there that you want for yourself in your career? Now, it may be that you're already in leadership. You're already a partner at your firm. And what you're finding is that you want to have your voice heard at the table. You might find that you want more influence over the way that your firm is operating, the direction of the firm. You may also find that you have children at home. A lot of the women who join my programs have women at home have children at home. And what they're trying to do is basically find their footing as leaders, both within the workspace and also at home. And so dealing with some of the challenges, and there are real challenges when you are mothering and lawyering and doing them both. These are both significant commitments. These are both identities, your identity as lawyer and your identity as mother. And how you navigate the balance between those two is uniquely up to you. And so we can help you. We can help you as a group to find the right pace, find the right balance, whatever that looks like. And it may lean more toward the mother. It may lean more toward the work. We're going to be talking about leadership and what that looks like for you. Now, you may be on leave at the time that you sign up for the program. I've had lawyers who are on leave when they join the program, and it becomes a space for them to explore what they're going to do when they return to work at the office. It can be a wonderful space for planning and get ahead of what that's going to be like. You might have already returned and you're looking for a space where you can talk about some of the challenges that come along with reestablishing your practice after having been on leave, and with the additional dynamic of having young children at home. You might find that what you're really looking for is a little bit more balance, that you want to be a bit more proactive in terms of how you manage your practice. You might have your own firm, right? It may be years into practice where you've had your own firm, or maybe you're just starting out and you want community. You might find that you're a little bit isolated sometimes, or you feel a little bit isolated. So having a community of support that you can tap into, where you can share your goals, where you can feel connected, that can be really impactful for you. And for everybody who participates, you're going to be asked to pick a goal. And so for you, you might think about what kind of a goal you would choose for yourself. Given a time frame of 6 months, right? The second half of 2024, what would be something that would be impactful for you? What kind of goal would you want to accomplish between July 2024 and the end of the year? And again, if you're listening to this at some other time, you might think about what kind of goals would be ideally suited for a group coaching program. So again, if you're at a firm and you're thinking about creating an environment where you can foster the growth of the women lawyers within your firm, we can set up a program for that. It can look however you want it to look. It can be as long as you want it to look. And the idea here is simply to create a space that fosters community and growth. Now, this is pretty much what I have to share with you today. So we have talked about group coaching for women lawyers. I've shared with you some of the components, the features, the benefits of being in a group coaching environment that if you haven't already experienced it, that would potentially be really helpful to understand. Again, if you are interested in joining me, then let me know, because I would love to have you. And if you're interested in creating your own program, you'd like my help with that, please do let me know. So I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have questions about it, reach out to me. I wish you a beautiful week and look forward to reconnecting again soon. Bye for now. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave a rating and review. Your feedback will help me create a podcast that's tailored to your needs and goes straight to the heart of what matters to you. For instructions on how to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com/podcast launch. See you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. If you want more information, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com. See you next week.